I'm Suzanne Verity. I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webinar. We decided based on survey results, this was a very high interest topic for us. So we want to talk about editorial, sales, and marketing collaboration. The webinar is brought to you by Renewed, and our tagline, the open network for specialized subscription, membership, and event professionals. So everybody on the phone or Zoom should probably fit in that category. Again, I'm Suzanne Verity. I'm publisher at EB Medicine, and I'll be your moderator. Just for a couple of housekeeping announcements. During today's presentation, you should be on mute. If you're not able to hear or see the presentation, or if you have any other technical issues, please send Stephanie a private message, Stephanie Williford, through the chat in Zoom. If you have questions for today's speaker, for Brian, you can submit them at the end during the live Q&A using the chat function. And after the presentation, you'll have access to the recording at www.renewed, no E between that W and D, .net. So renewed.net/resources. /resources. You will receive an email once it's posted, so you'll have a handy link. So now on to today's session. Our first speaker today is Brian Cuthbert. He is Group Vice President of Diversified Communications US, a global media company with market-leading exhibitions, conferences, digital products, and publications. Brian's responsible for Diversified Communications Business Communities Division. He oversees a broad portfolio of conferences, trade shows, and digital products. Brands under his stewardship include the Institute of Finance and Management, or IOFM, Intersolar North America, the Running Event, Running Insight, the American Society of Administrative Professionals, the Administrative Professionals Conference, and VinExpo New York. So I wanted to go into details there so you can see that he has quite a diverse portfolio. He is also part of the Diversified Communications US leadership team. Brian joined Diversified in April 2013 as Director of Sales for IOFM, one of those portfolio properties, and later became its Executive Director in 2015. There he was responsible for the significant growth of its event portfolio and certification business. Previously, he held sales and leadership roles at Greenhaven Partners and Kennedy Information. That's where I know you from, going way back, Brian. He was selling and leading sales teams across a wide variety of industries. Brian graduated from Fordham University with a BA in journalism. He's originally from New York, and he now resides in Maine with his wife and daughter. So yes, I think he gets the gold star for being the most frigid environment. I have to believe. So Brian, with that, I'd just go ahead and turn over the program to you and tell us what you know. Help.
Great, thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. I'm just really happy to be asked to speak right now to you, and this is a topic that has always been close to my heart. It's one that really can make a meaningful impact in our businesses, and it's one that is, on the surface, seems like something we all agree should happen. These functions should all work, kumbaya, work well together, and it is one of the most difficult things to truly create alignment within your organization. And so I'm going to get into some of the things we've done across companies I've been at, sort of my philosophy on it, and what I've taken to Diversified from those companies. So please don't hesitate to ask questions. I want to make it as interactive as possible, and sort of work through this with you all. So my background, I've managed all of the functions that we're going to talk about today: editorial, sales, and marketing. I've lived to tell the tale. I come out with a journalism background. That's what I graduated with. I started as an editorial assistant and then an associate editor, working for a variety of different magazines. And, I think one of the things that sort of shapes you as you move into leadership roles over time is who managed you? What did you learn from that person? And sometimes the best thing to make you a better manager and a better leader is to learn what you don't like, is to learn the different kinds of styles and approaches. And early on in my career, the dynamic between editorial, sales, and marketing was probably the most toxic environment, even to this day, I've still had in the company. And it never made sense. It just always seemed counterproductive. And I felt like it stunted our ability to grow and be nimble and move in the organization. And so from that journalism background, I wound up going into a sales role and then sort of progressed on from there. I joined Diversified as an acquisition. I was working for Greenhaven Partners. Wayne and Marshall Cooper run Greenhaven Partners. They have a variety of businesses. They used to own Kennedy Information, and they sold the Institute of Finance and Management to Diversified, and I went along with that acquisition. My background prior to Diversified is all specialty publishing. So it is small information, niche information markets, generally membership businesses, training like certification programs, and smaller conferences and summits. Now my world has all of those digital products, as well as ads, conferences, larger conferences, and then trade shows. So I've been in about 16 different industries or horizontals. A lot of these themes are tried and true. Doesn't matter what industry you're in, doesn't matter what market you're working on. So what we're going to talk about today is really how do we get this alignment and accepting why we're not in sync today, why it is important, how do we get started, right? If we know we have a challenge, we know we have an issue, we know we have an opportunity to fix this, to move the business forward, how do you actually take that first step? And what does that look like? We'll talk about how content products have evolved over time and sort of what an editorial looks like now in my world across these products, and except when you're finally all in sync. I will put the caveat in there. None of the products I'll talk about and none of the experience that I have with this is really around hard news, true hard news organization, right? So I am not coming from a position of working for the Associated Press and how we do that alignment. It's always been those types of companies that I've worked for and with, really where we've got to figure out a way to drive the revenue, and the content is becoming more and more such a critical piece of that. So just that piece of background for me. This is, without question, one of the favorite images I have in any presentation. The second person, the woman second in, looks like I would if you stuck me in a boat and gave me an oar and told me to row. And she really does sort of epitomize how out of sync we can be at times with this. It doesn't take much. When you think about these three functions within an organization, your content, your marketing, and your sales, the smallest nuance, the smallest tweak of one piece being out of sync, and the whole thing sort of crumbles and falls apart. That image just continues to make me smile every time I see it. It doesn't hurt I see that while it's snowing and has been snowing for, about 12 hours, and it's about 7 degrees outside. So I'll take whatever makes you smile at this point. Why aren't we in sync? It really is a perspective issue, right? What's the prism you look at the world through? So your content team is probably going to say, we know our market best. We know the industry. We know what they want. We know how to serve it. We don't need to be told that. Your marketing teams will say, we know the broader audience. We know how to engage with them. We know what they need. We know how to feed them the things that are necessary to sort of move them into the funnel and create the engagement. And sales will say that we know our customers best. Probably sounds familiar in some ways for your organization. So in many cases, companies will look at those statements not as complementary, which is what I think they are. We worry and we talk a lot about, and I've been in the same boat, right? Am I a content-driven organization? Am I marketing-led? Or am I a sales-driven? Culture and organization. And that's how it works. And when you create that and when you talk about it in that way, you are actually, by default, creating silos. You're creating ways to create friction for those three functional areas within your organization. So then what happens is we start to feel like we're competing with each other. And then you get into the blame game, which does none of us any good. So why do we need to be in sync? I think more than ever now, I certainly don't think we needed COVID to sort of reinforce this, but it certainly has. Budgets are tight and they're not going to get any looser for a while, right? Our email open rates certainly have been on a decline. They're not necessarily where they used to be. Customers are sophisticated and skeptical. How are you engaging with your customer? How are you getting new people into the funnel? There's information everywhere that people can get. So what is it about what you offer that is unique in the market? And how do you get to this point? How do you get it where everyone is in lockstep and everyone is working together and that you have a common goal and a common vision? So it's sort of a 5-step approach, the way I've always looked at it. One is you're going to sort of set and sell the vision, chart the course. This is where we're going. You're going to align the goals. And this is a trickier one, aligning the goals and defining the roles. And they're going to be aligned and defined likely in ways that are going to make people a little more uncomfortable than they may have been in the past. And that has to be part of this. It has to take time to be to have the uncomfortable conversations to make it work and make it move forward. And then you align and create a common single definition of what success looks like for you and your organization and for specifically those teams. And I'll talk through some of the things that we do that have worked for us in the past. So when we talk about setting and selling the vision, lots of us have strategies. Lots of your team don't know necessarily what those strategies are or then how to go and ensure that they're executing on it. So clear messaging and following through and making sure from you to your directors, your managers, on down, that vision is single purpose. Everyone understands the goal. Everyone understands why we're going there, how we're going to get there, and that they're aligned with it. There is always a disconnect in so many organizations about what leadership says is the goal and how that actually permeates and translates down to the lower levels of the company. They're the ones that are going to have to execute. They're your boots on the ground. So forget what was. You want to move forward, focus on what is and focus on what will be. Okay, and you have to think about that for your business today and your business going forward. What's the multi-year plan out? It cannot be remember when. It cannot be that's the way we've always done it. Fantastic. The horse and buggy approach didn't work for that profession, is not going to work for ours. We have to be nimble and evolve. We have to make sure that we're always looking in a customer-centric way. And so what does the customer want? How do they want to consume the content and the information from us? That has evolved in the past 10 years. It's evolved in the past 5. And in some of your markets, it may have evolved in the past 12 months. We know in some of ours it has. How people are looking to consume content has changed. And we have to meet the need wherever it is. So in order to create the alignment, you have to enable it. And you have to really encourage that in an ongoing basis. The alignment doesn't come from you just saying, we're going to do this. It does require, as leaders, to be in there and to make sure over the course of a few months that that alignment is starting to gain traction. And then it does become second nature. It's like anything else. The repetition will create that sort of consistency, and your role may be able to start to step back and let it run a bit more on autopilot when everyone understands appreciates, and embraces that culture and that alignment that you're looking to go for. So we'll start with aligning goals. Okay. Every one of the groups we're going to talk about can answer any of these questions. Who's your audience? What do they need? What are they buying now? Why are they actually buying it? Do we know why? What's the why? And what else might they buy? Right? I mean, if your organization is always thinking about what other iterations of products can I create? Is there, maybe I have a membership on a broader topic and there is an information need that's even a deeper niche that can maybe justify a breakout in some way as a membership product, as a series of webinars that are paid, as a training product, whatever it might be. You have an existing customer, and especially now, we start to look at the market more broadly. What are customers going to be spending on? How are they going to be spending? Are they going to be looking to new vendors? Or are they going to be looking to consolidate spends on those groups and those organizations who have been delivering for them over time and that they see the value from? So what else might they buy? And that is a question, quite honestly, your editors should know as well as your sales teams. And that can be a shift in terms of the thinking. So talk about defining roles for your content, marketing, and sales teams. So for editorial, to me, it's creating compelling content that makes our organization or our product a must-have resource. Content needs to feed the marketing and sales engine, right? When we talk about marketing, we'll talk a lot about engagement. We'll talk a lot about how we sort of feed the funnel strategy, and whether you use top of the funnel to get them in as marketing leads, marketing will work them through the process, and the output is as a sales qualified lead. If you use it in different ways through that process of the funnel, marketing is converting and getting the buy while they're in there. Great, but at the end of the day, that's what we need. We need industry leading, the best content in the market to stand out. I will never undersell the value of content, and I will never try and go cheap on it either. When you have to invest, especially now more than ever. Content is king. It's all, content is king. It is what differentiates you. It is the lifeblood of your products and your organization. Credibility comes and starts with the best content. And so remember that. This is not about editorial is more important than sales, more important than marketing. Just from a cultural perspective, like in IOFM, that business is a paid membership. We have about 6,000 members. We have a certification business that's been around for like 20 years now. And then we run smaller conferences. The whole business is based on the content. Everything comes from that. And then what do I want my editor to do? Understand and talk to the customers and understand their needs before they even might. Start to piece together when you're having the conversations or the interviews with your markets. What are you hearing? How are you connecting the dots? What could be interesting that maybe we don't know as we start to think in strategic planning? What could we build out? What could we invest in? Acquisitions, joint ventures, whatever it might be. Where's the need? So that's our editorial. For marketing, it's about leveraging what knowledge base we have in editorial and of the customer and creating the campaigns, right? That will meet the need, create the engagement, show value, address or feed the fear. Some of our markets, compliance is a huge topic. That absolutely plays into a must-have environment. Feeding the fear does work, right? What you don't know can cost your organization. What you don't know, as a trusted resource, here's what we provide. And make sure that you're leveraging, thinking channel agnostically. You know, we preach this a lot in our groups. Please don't tell me that this content is only good for this purpose. Content that maybe from an interview can be repurposed as a podcast? How can we use it in a webinar? How can we turn it into a white paper? How do we get it on our site? Could it feed the forum as a discussion thread? You have to be thinking channel agnostic, because not all of your audience is going to want to consume content in the same way. I mean, I'm sure there are people who maybe only used to go to our in-person events, who maybe now aren't really thinking in-person's the way that they want to consume content going forward. Well, I have to make sure that I have those channels locked down. So if they decide, and this has been happening, when we would run, let's say, a more robust virtual event, we were seeing 60 to 80% of the people registered. And in some cases, we had 2,000 people registered. Some of them were 500, 1,500. It really ran the gamut, but in that range, 60 to 80% of them had never attended an in-person event in the first place. So we were starting to find that that opened up new avenues for us. And people want to consume content in that way. They may not have ever wanted to go to a show in the first place. Meet them where they are. For sales. Having a sales background and having spent the majority of my career in sales, this is one of the harder conversations, and one of the ones that really sort of has to set the stage, because I think for a lot of companies, you look at your top salesperson and you say, we can never survive without so-and-so. We would never be able to make the business work. Well, your top salesperson, your sales management leadership has to get on board with this. In the same way your editor does, in the same way your VP, chief marketing officer, whatever the title is. No one in this process is irreplaceable. I've gone through having to replace editors, marketers, and sales who could not, or would not, more specifically, buy in to the alignment that we needed. And there is always a fear of what happens if I get rid of my editor? What happens if I get rid of my salesperson? No one wants to do that. That's not in anyone's best interest. The best interest is, I've got these talented people, let's create the right alignment. But you have to be willing to make the hard decisions if you can't get there either, because the business will move forward. You have the right content, you have the right business, the right level of engagement with your audience, business will move on. So from a sales perspective, it's been evolving over time as it is. How we sold yesterday isn't how we're going to sell today or next year. The customer needs are changing. The way in which a customer wants a more consultative sale. We have some markets where the audience, they don't necessarily really want to talk to sales as much. And so we have to work on ways that ensuring sales is delivering value to them. It is not about asking for the order. It's how can I better support your business? And it is touching them with things that absolutely have no sale to them. Piece of content they may need, looking at the analytics of what your customers are searching for, what information they need. True consultative sales is what I think we all need in our businesses. My best salespeople know the value of our content. That is table stakes. They appreciate and understand the value of the content because that is the differentiator, and that can be a door opener for them. Clear alignment with how sales role will be defined and how they'll work together. So the role of leadership in this, and I imagine that many of you right now are sort of looking at this and saying, well, okay, where do we go? You have to be in it. Like we talked about, it's not just about throwing them in a room virtually and saying, okay, you guys are going to start meeting and figure it out. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to get along. Let me know the last time you told a couple of people to go get along and that it actually wound up happening. They're just going to revert back to the way it was. So when conflict arises, when you start to put these together, you have to deal with it and deal with it quickly. Understand both sides. This is change management. Bringing the groups together, hearing where the rubs are, talking it through with both of them, and trying to find the alignment and the common ground with them. Making it and letting it be them as part of the solution, right? As opposed to you saying, all right, enough, here's what we're doing, move on. That's your last resort if they really can't get there, and that's a bigger problem. You have to own the vision, accept that there might be hiccups in that vision as well. Own it, deal with it, accept if there are ways to improve it, and move on. Recognize and share the success of a great article, the success of a great sale, the success of a tremendous engagement campaign that brought new leads in, or an article that just drew tremendous traffic. Share it across the group. Sales has to be aware of what editorial's doing that's great, that marketing, and let them feel part of the same success. It's not just about sales, it's just about revenue, marketing's just about their piece, editorial, just about theirs. It's about the collective success. The product needs to grow. If I have a membership business, that product needs to grow. I need renewal rates to improve. I need to get new members in, and I need to make sure that we're upselling, cross-selling, meeting the need, taking from a 1-user membership to a 5-user membership. Those 3 groups are critical to making that happen. Course correct as you go. Things will come up. Things aren't going to work necessarily the way you wanted them to right off the bat. None of us are perfect. I'm still course correcting. It happens. You just got to be willing to embrace it. And then define success. Everyone wants the North Star. What's the North Star for our business? In one of our membership businesses, we want to grow the renewal rate by 3 points year on year. That's the North Star right now for that business. And then we obviously have revenue goals too, but there's an example. I need renewals to improve, and I need to make sure that's happening. We want to keep customers during this tough time, and it's not going to be easy. So it's going to take all those groups to work on it and to make it happen. If you identify your KPIs, you're thinking about what are the KPIs that are going to help me know success. And when I start to think about it, editorial success and marketing success and sales success, honestly, most of them are the same to me. Most of them are. What defines success for our business? Start there. And when you start to think about that, it's revenue hitting its number, number of new customers coming in, time spent on site, page views, new people into the funnel, whatever it is, when you start to think about it, most of them are the same. They fall into all 3 of those groups. They should have the same goals. Now, they should also have their own and independent ones, but the drivers of success for the business need to be goals that they're all sharing in common. The aligning of behavior. So, by the way, I'm going through this presentation, probably making it sound like it's not, there's some challenges. It's hard. There were some really tough conversations and uncomfortable conversations that had to be had. Some groups had turnover in one of the 3 areas. Some groups had no turnover. Everybody bought in. But it is difficult to change. We're not saying that what someone's doing is wrong. We just want to look to a different way. We want to look to a way that sort of aligns everything better and brings more of a common goal together. So one way that I find is successful to align behavior is to encourage the change with a variable comp. So it stands to reason all 3 of those functions, it can't just be sales, right? I remember one of the biggest rubs I always heard is, I'm going to do all this work and so is going to make a fortune on it. Okay. Now, sales generally has the lower base. If sales is doing what you need in terms of outbound calls, and you have the right comp plan in place, they're earning every penny that they get. That's one that we can overcome, but we understand the value of what marketing's bringing to the table, what the value of what good content's bringing into the table. So revenue from new members to budget, there's an example. Renewal rates to budget. If we hit our goal or do better, there's a variable there. And this doesn't need to be a big number. It is just about rewarding the behavior, reinforcing what you're looking to accomplish, and getting everyone on the same page. And not every group, not every company I've had always does this, but I find it to be a great equalizer as we move forward. And then there's always that sort of I like having a discretionary bonus that's a number that gets split among the whole team. And that is based on whatever metrics, whatever success you're defining. And again, in some businesses, that number has been $2,500 split 5 ways, 5,000 split a few ways. Doesn't have to be a big number, but it is about a carrot. It is about a common goal. It's about driving that desire to win, to have success, to serve the customer most effectively and grow the business, and in turn, hopefully, grow their careers, grow their career paths, and grow within the organization. So the evolution of content products has always been sort of, we'll build it, we'll write it, and then marketing and sales, you go do your thing. How it really should be, and how we really strive to have it, is understand the market to start to place bets on what the customers are buying. So I really like quarterly brainstorms. Just sometimes there's nothing new. Sometimes there are a lot of things that are new. But getting those 3 groups together, not to talk about sort of the day-to-day minutia, not at all. To step back 30,000 feet, what are the trends going on in the market? What are you hearing? What do you hear? You know, what are we hearing from our customers in terms of opportunities? What are some of the macro trends in the market that we're serving? Is there anything there? Is there anything I can do in my role to support you? Is there anything we need? We absolutely have weekly meetings. I'll get into that. But this is a chance when we talk about what will customers buy, bigger picture, stepping back and just looking at it in that way. And this is not a long formal, everybody takes 10 hours to go build a PowerPoint deck, by no stretch. I expect these roles to all know their roles, their markets, the audience, and what we're doing. So evolution of collaborative editorial, and that's sort of a word came up with the editor for IOFM. He and I worked together in, it seems like, many prior lives, and I brought him into IOFM a number of years ago when I felt that business, we just weren't aligned on what my goals were for the content. We were not being nimble. We were not reacting or listening to the market. And he's made an enormous impact on that business, and everyone knows it. And he's sort of the poster child as we do it in other groups, because the way he works with sales and marketing is amazing. They're in the same boat. They're all understanding the growth of the product is good for everybody. So he'll talk to sales and say, well, what's working, what's selling, marketing, what was the traffic, what was the engagement that we had? Did we strike a vein with something that maybe I didn't know? What could I be producing more of? What's the opportunity to grow the business? And part of the job as well is to make sales and marketing smarter about the industry that we're serving, right? Your content leads are unbelievable resources. They know so much about the industry. When we have onboarding for sales and marketing, they have an hour without question minimum with the editor. They're getting that boot camp, and it's usually 2 or 3 sessions of let's talk about the audience. Let's talk about it from a content perspective, right? From his world of here's where the industry's going. Here's what our audience tends to like. Here's how I think about it. Here's what I'd love to know from you. So it starts it off right at the right level of, I want to hear what you have to say. Don't ever hesitate to reach. We've worked in companies before where a salesperson was not emailing an editor unless they felt like they emailed their boss and their boss's boss because it was a question. They knew the editor would have a problem with it, or sales didn't want to hear from this one. You got to break the walls. You have to, and it's tough to do, but it pays dividends in the long run, not just for the business and the revenue and the growth of it, but for your culture. You want this collaborative culture, especially now for so many of us. I mean, I worked from home for a number of years. Our whole company's working from home now. Collaboration has changed, and I think we need that as part of our day-to-day business. We have enough to do to grow the business. Friction and spending time on small ticky-tacky fights is not going to get us anywhere to grow it. What I expect from this quote-unquote collaborative editor, it's not just about producing the best content, because it is, and about making sure that the investment is there and the resources are there, whether it's on a contract level, a full-time basis for support, making sure that we are producing without fail the best content money can buy, the best content for our audience, that we're understanding what are the opportunities and we're building content to meet them. So I also need that editor to get out in the market, to go when we used to have in-person events, to go to those events, to maybe speak on third-party events, not just on our own. As an example, the editor for IOFM is the MC for the IOFM conferences. He does the keynote every year and tends to do about 6 to 8 sessions over the course of the event. We run 70 to 80 in a lot of the shows. So it could be just moderating a panel, doing a standalone session, doing a presentation, co-presenting with someone for a session. We need that editor out there, because what you find is the editor at industry events talks and gives a presentation. There may be a vendor who's in that room who says, wow, they really know what they're talking about in that market. We should get in touch with them, which could turn into a white paper sponsorship, which could turn into a webinar sponsorship, which could turn into, again, maybe they become members, maybe they get certified for if you have a training for the vendors, exhibit at your show, whatever it might be. The credibility that your editor gets by being out in the market, A, will get him more people to talk to, he or she more people to talk to and engage with, more of a presence for you and the organization in the market. But we found it also makes us more money. It really does. We spend and invest in it at the comfort level he or she's good with. And, you know, I mean, generally, what am I talking about? In our admin world or in IOFM or in others, events that are not ours, maybe 3 a year, not many, really not many. But the act of doing it is important. And in today's world, a Zoom call, something on WebEx, whatever it might be, all good. Our editor also leads the weekly sales calls with sales and marketing. What we're working on, why we're soliciting feedback, help me understand what I can do, what do you guys need, and focusing on customer engagement. This was a big change. So, you know, obviously we want our members, one of the best ways to know you've got a shot at renewing a member is that they're engaged. Engagement, not just that they logged in once every 3 months in your membership site, but that they're in it, they're asking questions, they're trying to understand more, improve on something, talk to other folks within the group. I task our editors with talking to a minimum of 5 renewed, 5 new, and 5 canceled members every month. Why are you coming back? How can I serve you? Welcome aboard. How can I serve you most effectively? How did we fail? What could we do better? And what we found is a lot of these folks will take the call from the editor. They might not want to talk to sales. They might just let it go to voicemail or just delete it, and might be an email that they delete. We have a full onboarding process. This is part for new of the onboarding process. But thinking about, you renewed with us, a call from the editor saying, thank you for renewing. Thank you for your business. What's been working? Is there anything you're missing? And that intelligence that they'll get can be amazing. We've also had the conversation turn into, that's great. Is there anything else you can need? Well, we've really been struggling with training. We're trying to get our team up to speed on these 3 topics. And the editor may say, well, have you ever, you know, we have a certification program that covers those, because I'm not in sales for it. I can certainly put you in touch with the right person, but you know, we do have a program that meets that. Oh, really? I didn't know. Now, sales, meanwhile, and marketing have beaten the drum with it. God knows. There have been emails, there have been social posts, there have been all sorts of touches, but those conversations they create an engagement with the audience that's impactful, but also it's turned over revenue opportunities. Of the canceled members, I'd love to tell you, your editor gets on the phone and converts them all. They've flipped 10% of people who canceled to coming back within 3 months of the conversation. Every one you gain back is great. So I look at it as a positive. We do look at having that collaborative editor as well support sales and marketing. So, and this is about positioning, right? So joining a sales call as needed if it's around, help me understand the industry perspective from our editor who can talk to it and give you some context. It's not around telling our editor what to write. That's not it. But if a sales call with senior leadership at a company maybe needs that support and that expertise, it's the right positioning for everybody involved. And we do ask our editors to look at our kits, some of the larger, more significant messaging that we may have out. I want marketing to feel comfortable saying, is this the right way, especially in the more technical markets where misspeaking or a phrase that's turned or something like that can cost you credibility. It's important to make sure that alignment's there. Our teams meet every Monday morning and they review the marketing plans and the results. They talk about the sales efforts and they talk about the editorial plans and the editorial challenges. Everyone's got to bring to that table challenge and an opportunity, good piece of good news, piece of a struggle, right? We have to share, not everything's rainbows and unicorns, okay? And you want that trust built by showing, oh, all right, there is some vulnerability there. They are having struggles. They're like me in that way. And we found that has built trust in a big way. And so I strongly encourage it. When we first did it, yeah, I sat on the meetings probably for the first 3 months. I tried to say as little as I could. Some meetings I couldn't. You had to sort of get it back on course and remind people in a productive way. I mean, my role has changed since we implemented that, but it's not as though the group director is in it either, right? Those groups are able to handle it. They're part of the leadership team. They need to act like it. And that's an expectation, a baseline expectation for us. The other part is there is no finger pointing, none. When we miss as a team. When we fail as a team, we learn from it, and we get better because of it. We succeed, we fail, we try everything as a team. How do we lift each other up to do something better? There will be times something will go wrong. It'll be a sales issue, a marketing issue, an editorial issue. No, it's an us issue. How can we all help? How do we make it work? And that is an important part of trying to get there. This can take a while, right? Not just actually the picture here showing the oars going in order, but getting to that point, again, it's not an overnight piece. So what's true collaboration mean? What's the working version of Camelot? I didn't draw that, I promise. I wouldn't even know how. That's the sad part. Marketing sees value in running new copy past editorial and sales, and they don't need to, but they just see value and comfort in saying, hey, I'm positioning this new IRS legislation this way. Is that right? Any red flags there? Editorial sees value in running some upcoming story assignments past marketing and sales. Hey, we're going down this road. We think there's tremendous need in the market for it. And by the way, sales may be like, oh, I haven't heard that. Marketing be like, yeah, it's fine. Editorial's going to have their decision and go run it. But just the ability to share it, that we're thinking about this. And sales, again, sharing some vulnerability. Share your success, share the struggles. We've talked about no finger pointing. It's not sales, marketing, or editorial's issue. It's everybody's issue. It just always will be. And building that culture, creating that alignment, we've seen it. It will result, for a variety of reasons, strength and growth in your business. This is one of those topics. When you get on the other side of it in some groups, it feels so good. In other groups, you feel like you're battling it every day. and you wonder why. And there's so many nuances to it. And change never comes quickly, but it starts at the top. And embracing and accepting the value each of these areas brings to your organization, they're all success. You can't just have good content without marketing and sales. You can't have just good content and marketing and bad sales. You need all three working. You need high performers in all of those areas. With high performers comes high ego drives, right? But you also want that right empathy level in all of those functions, that they can work together and also have empathy for your customers as needed. So with that, that is right there, 45 minutes. Yeah, it's about right. I could probably do this topic for 7 hours. Wouldn't go past me. I love it. I would love to answer any questions. And just know, if we don't get to any questions or you want to ask me something after the fact, I am always happy. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can email me anytime. Always happy to chat. I think what Stephanie and the folks are doing at Renewed is incredible. I think one of the things that is so important about our world here is, and this industry and our profession, even though we're in so many different markets, it is the peer learnings. So much of things that we've implemented and put into place, whether it's in our membership or our training businesses, really come from the conversations with others. And so whether it's a session like this, whether it's an ongoing dialogue with people who are maybe just going through the same challenges, the beauty of something like Renewed, which I really appreciate, is just it connects all of us. And it's no judgment zone. We're all struggling with something. We all have our own challenges. So I appreciate what they've put together here and really encourage you to sort of stay connected with the community, because it is how we'll drive our businesses forward, and those learnings will be key. So I'm happy to answer any questions, anything at all.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. That was very nice, very, I think, kind of inspirational, and gave me a lot to think about. Hey, one big question is, Jerica, how the heck did you draw on the presentation? We're all very impressed with your skills there, even Brian. But no, seriously, one question I have, I'm wondering if you can give some, like a real life story testimonial of how, one big challenge and one big success for how you were able to unify across those departments with your company, in any of your companies.
Yeah. So one good example is in the IOFM business. We were a membership business, paid membership business, and it was two memberships that ultimately merged into one with very different styles, very different approaches. And the content tended to be feature-length articles. And that was really a lot of what we were producing. And the renewal rates were dreadful. And they were not getting any better. And so we took a step back and brought sales, editorial, and marketing together, as we really had to rethink, what is this new combined entity going to be? How are we going to go to market, and what's the market need? And so marketing led some research surveying that we did. Sales called some of our key customers to understand what it was that they were looking for directly in more depth. And our editorial team talked to a lot of customers who canceled their membership and understood what was missing, what was lacking. And so part of that effort wound up transforming what the business was, our pricing model, how we produce content. We no longer produce anything that's more than 500 to 700 words max. What people wanted ultimately were answers to their most pressing questions. And so as a group, sort of came out with, I can sell this. I feel like the marketing value is there. I can support the content. And we produced a different version of Ask the Experts within the membership. We created a different style of content that was shorter, meatier, more to the point. And we created engagement through forums. Ask the Experts for us tends to get about 600 questions in a year that we'll answer. We guarantee to answer every question. And those big articles that we were spending so much money on, we've wound up creating multiple assets for the same spend. And the business since then has seen a 20+ point renewal rate increase. This is over 2 years, 2+ years. Revenue, but they worked together on it. They all identified we had something that was a bit broken. What could we do better? They worked together on it. So if you can find the common unifying challenge, they all agree this is something we can do better. And we get them in a room to talk about how they're part of the solution. They're bought in. And it took time. It was about a 4-year process. It took a lot of development work. It was a lot of work to get it up and running. Then you get it up and running, and then you've got to finish through your cycle on renewals to start to get to new. So that was one example where we really added a feature that had tremendous value and really now has great legs, and they all feel like it's an ownership stake for them, and it's been great.
Sure, that's good. Is there, I would invite anybody else from the audience if you have similar examples, just for the sake of variety. If you could kind of raise your hand and share something along those lines, that would be great.
Hey, Suzanne, Stephanie here. I have a question. So, Brian, I first heard you do this presentation several years ago at another conference and was just blown away with it. So many practical takeaways. So thank you. And I'm proud to say I think we've made huge strides in the right direction in terms of communicating our strategy and our goals and aligning the team around them. And I do totally agree how important that is. One question that I have, I feel like sometimes where you get maybe not aligned, but frustration is not so much in the big picture, but the little picture. Like, just process things that it's annoying because this person does this or this department does that. So how do you, as a leader, make sure that, okay, we feel very aligned and I think things are working well, but how do you identify those other problems that may be arising that people are not stepping up and having conversations for, and encourage your team to do that?
So, and we mean more on the internal process side versus customer issues that might be coming in?
Yes.
So that tends to manifest itself, because it's a great question, right? It's easy to get into the 30,000 foot, and then it's the things in the weeds, the customer requests or the process that I usually just go to this person. How do I do it? So we identified and worked through some workflow documents with each of the functions. Okay, let's talk through the sort of day in a life. Where do you go? Where do you go for these pieces? What do you need? You use central services for this. Customers looking for a logo, sales needs it, and they go email the entire group trying to find it. So we tried, and again, not perfect, because in the weeds is where sometimes the little things do come up, and it tends to come up in our weeklies. So that's where what's the challenge, and each of them tend to bring it up. So we get that, but we try to identify the workflow and process for them, whether it's on how they're producing content, how they're supporting a webinar or a podcast that requires multiple steps of who they're working with. And then honestly, that's where we talk sort of about over the course of a year. It's over the course of a year, a lot of those things tend to flush out, that you'll hear it and can identify it. And it may simply be, okay, here's how we'd like it to go, but so-and-so, it's your call at the end of the day, how we're going to handle this, right? And so that's where you stay involved as long as is necessary. But a lot of that does ferret itself out. And we found that not a lot becomes unique year over year if the product mix is the same. But honestly, Stephanie, I agree with you. It's the devil's in the details. So it's those then little pieces. I get the alignment, but is this my job or his job, or do I need to talk to him about it, or can I figure it out on my own? And it's figuring out those lines and then giving the empowerment of who actually owns this. And, you know, you've seen RACIs before. I think those could really be hit or miss in terms of who owns it, who should know about it. In some cases it works, in some cases it just leads to more confusion. And I think it can depend on your group and what really comes in.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I also, anybody that would like to can raise their hand if they want to ask a question out loud or post in the chat. Since I don't see any, I'm going to throw in another one, but I don't want to hog the stage on the questions. This isn't exactly an alignment or collaboration question, but I always love to get this answer from people. When you're talking about having conversations with the audience, what are some of the best questions that you've found to identify pain points and what the needs are?
For the customer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So a couple of things that we do there. One is sort of going to be more on the anecdotal, the conversations that we have. The other is going to be on the data. So we use a tool called Zendesk. So Zendesk we use as a customer service platform for us. Everything comes in to our main mailbox is a ticket, and then the ticket can then get routed. So we look at that data on a weekly basis. Are there any trends or are there any problems that are starting to ferret out? That would be interesting. On the flip side, in terms of where opportunities or challenges, it's really coming out in the conversations. It's coming out conversations that sales are having, that editorial's having, that gets fed out. Marketing is always looking at the analytics. So where might we be seeing declines month on month? Any spikes, keyword spikes, where's our organic search? And that's a key one as well, like organic search, as much as we can, that comes up in every meeting. What are people searching for? Where are we coming up? How can we better support it? So we do look at a mix. It's those day-to-day one-on-one conversations. There's no way that it gets compiled in a centralized way. But the data that we use from the marketing analytics and engagement, and then what we use from the customer service tools, sort of combine that all together, and you tend to find a story that makes sense, that give you sort of your three key risks, concerns, opportunities, whatever you decide to define it in that day, because what might be a risk for me one day is an opportunity another. But we do a mix of the one-to-one conversations, what comes out. We got to talk to people. And it can't be email, right? I want people to set 10-minute calls are fine. Don't try and do it all via email, because a conversation that's 10 minutes gets you more than what 20 emails will get every time, because you'll get that nugget. You'll see it in their face. If you do it now, everything's video calls anyway. You can see it, you can dig a little deeper, and you'll get so much further on it. Some markets it's easier than others, because some markets want no part of actually talking to you, so that's a challenge.
I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
Well, actually, sort of two potentially related questions. One is whether in some of these experiences you've had, I'm just curious if you've found over time it ended up shifting some of the staff mix, or where you needed to hire or had more people.
Yeah.
Second question is talking about these ideas with editorial people. And I think there can be a perception, particularly, you know, I work with a lot of people from a journalism background, as I am myself, and they've kind of gotten over the hurdle of, say, working more with sales and not having a firewall. But there tends to be a perception that it's more and more work for editorial. We answer hundreds of sort of our version of Ask the Expert questions. We do sales training, we onboard salespeople, we sometimes participate in sales calls, we reduce all of the, we review a lot of the marketing materials or put together the content for marketing. And, you know, it's a lot more tasks for editorial, and sometimes feeling maybe the message is not to editorial, it's to the other teams, getting more information or some things that make the editorial job easier or better, rather than feeling like maybe they're helping everybody else understand and position the content, if that makes sense.
It really does, and I think it's a great question and a challenge, right? Where, hey, your editor's this great resource, so all of a sudden you go to them with everything, and they're strained. So you know, your two questions, there's a part of it that's aligned, and I'll get to with your question about shifting the staffing mix.
Yeah.
Because one of the things in terms of over time, how has the staffing mix evolved? We are spending as much, if not more, on content development than we would have in the past. Because, you know, when we look at our editor, if we can, and what are the kinds of things that they may need more support on, or that, and you know, you even think of things like Upwork. Some markets, Upwork can help. Some markets, I really need the expertise. I can't put someone writing an article about 1042S compliance who is a generalist. It won't work. So we have looked to identify partners who may have their own consulting business in a particular niche, but trusted people who can write and understand a segment, who can then support our editor most effectively and possibly lessen their workload. So for example, with Ask the Experts, our editor is answering very few of those questions directly, but none of it gets pushed through, particularly on the compliance side, that he doesn't see. But he's now empowered his managing editor to do all of the best practice questions. Compliance is still over here. We have a partner for that, but the best practice questions, he's been able to delegate that. Because that editor also is then being pulled into a variety of other kinds of things. Now, we've had to have the conversations where, okay, we love the collaboration, guys, but there's also another job to do here. So let's set the expectation that, you know, you guys are going to have a set hour a week, maybe on your own, or 45 minutes a week. Talk through. So instead of coming on a one-to-one basis, every time I get a question, I'm going to email someone and ask the answer, as opposed to, let me try and collect some things in aggregate, have a conversation or a single email that can communicate it out. It is a balancing act, because you do not want your editor to also feel like all I'm doing is supporting everyone else, and you guys are still relying on me to deliver the best content. And I either need more resources to do it, it needs to hit my wallet, because I'm not getting paid anymore to do all of these different things. All, by the way, completely legitimate concerns. And so I think it's the kind of thing to manage, and also just be, some of it is as much expectations around, you know, these one-off emails will drive you nuts. And now if your team is on Slack, or your team is using Teams, and everybody's just messaging all the time anyway, it can feel overwhelming. So stepping in at that point, setting, these are the kinds of activities to pull in. Is there a better way to compile? What do you need to be able to answer these more effectively? You seem to be asking the same question 7 different ways. What information can we provide? What kind of templates? And then work it through. It may just be, you're never going to get to the perfect solution, but you may have to sort of push back on some of these one-off kinds of questions or needs, while still maintaining that partnership approach, because I completely get it from the editorial perspective, right? We want to be very conscious of their time, because I also don't want my editors working 60 hours a week. I don't. I want them to work what I'm paying them to do. And so that aligns with staffing. As far as the rest of the staffing, we always go back and forth on marketing and sales. And Do I need more marketing than I do sales? Do I need a mix of the two? Right now, I haven't really changed the marketing sales mix. I've added some more support. The skill sets I'm looking for are different. Absolutely table stakes on strong digital marketing experience. I find good writing is harder and harder to come by on the marketing side, particularly at the more junior levels. A lot more training, a lot more. I mean, I think everybody says that. When I came out of college and my first article, my editor massacred it. So I feel like maybe everybody's been complaining about that since the dawn of time. But we have not seen a major shift in the number of FTEs in those areas, but more specifically in the skill sets I'm looking for have absolutely changed over time. Does that help?
Yep, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I hate to do this, but I need to cut us off. We're out of time, and if you didn't get an answer to a question or didn't feel, comfortable asking a question in this forum, you can always reach out directly to Brian. He provided his contact information at the end of his at the end of his slides, and those will be emailed to you this week. Thanks to everyone for joining us today, and especially to Brian for a great presentation. We really appreciate your taking the time to put everything together for us. For the group, you'll receive an email this week with a link to the recording and to the slides, so you can replay that to pound it into your head, as I do sometimes, or to share with others on your team. If you haven't already, please be sure to check out the webinar library as well as upcoming events at www.renewed.net, so you can get past content and then look ahead to see current content or future content. You can always also recommend ideas if you have them. If you have a need for a particular topic to be addressed, there's a programming committee that can take that into conversation. Take that into consideration. We do have conversations once a month to come up with programming ideas across different areas of interest among the group. So thanks again for attending today's webinar, and I hope you have a great day.